The gunshot that shattered the window of the general store missed Nora Camden's head by 3 inches, and she didn't even flinch. She simply stepped to the side, continued measuring out the flour for Mrs. Henderson, and said in her steady voice that the total would be $2.15. The other customers dove behind barrels and shelves, but Nora had lived through worse than drunken cowboys shooting up the street on a Saturday afternoon in Laredo, Texas. It was June of 1876, and trouble seemed to find this border town as regularly as the Rio Grande flooded its banks. Marshal Tucker hauled the drunk off to jail while Nora swept up the broken glass. She was 23 years old, had buried both parents to cholera, survived a flash flood that destroyed half the town 2 years prior, and run this general store alone since her father's death. Her dark hair was always pulled back in a practical bun. Her gray eyes missed nothing, and her hands never shook no matter what chaos erupted around her. The townspeople said Nora Camden could weather any storm, and they meant it literally and figuratively. What they didn't know was that beneath her calm exterior, Nora felt profoundly alone. She had learned early that showing fear or weakness invited more trouble, so she had become stone. But stone gets cold at night, and there were moments when she locked the store and climbed the stairs to her small apartment above that the silence felt suffocating. She was closing up that evening when she heard the commotion down the street. Raised voices, the sound of hooves, someone shouting about a horse thief. Nora locked the door and walked toward the growing crowd despite herself. She had learned that in a town like Laredo, it was better to know what trouble was brewing than to be caught unaware. A man was on his knees in the dirt, hands tied behind his back, surrounded by angry ranchers. He was young, maybe 25 or 26, with dark hair that fell across his forehead and eyes that blazed with defiance even as blood trickled from a cut above his eyebrow. His clothes were dusty from the trail. His hat lay trampled nearby, and despite his predicament, there was something in the set of his jaw that suggested he wouldn't beg for mercy. "Caught him red-handed with 3 of my horses," Bill Morgan was saying, his face flushed with rage. "String him up, I say. We all know what we do with horse thieves." "I bought those horses fair and square from a man in Cotulla," the young man said, his voice rough but steady. "I got a bill of sale in my saddlebag." "Convenient that this so-called seller isn't here to confirm your story," Morgan spat. Marshal Tucker pushed through the crowd looking weary. He was a good man, but getting old for this work, and Nora could see the resignation in his eyes. Horse thieving was a hanging offense, and angry ranchers didn't always wait for trials. "Now hold on," Tucker said, but his voice lacked conviction. "We should at least look at this bill of sale before we do anything hasty." Morgan grabbed the saddlebag from his man and dumped its contents in the street. Clothes, some dried beef, a battered tin cup, a few coins, and a folded piece of paper. He snatched up the paper and squinted at it in the fading light. This could be forged. Probably is. "It isn't," the young man said. "The man's name was Carson, had a ranch outside Cotulla going under, said he needed quick cash." "Convenient," Morgan repeated. "Real convenient that you can't prove a word of it." Nora found herself stepping forward before she quite knew what she was doing. "I know Carson," she said clearly. "Came through here about 3 weeks ago, said he was liquidating stock. Sold me some supplies at a good price because he needed cash quickly. Said something about debts." Every eye turned to her. Morgan's face darkened. "That doesn't prove anything, Miss Camden." "It proves this man's story is plausible," she said. "And last I checked, we don't hang people on suspicion. The brands on those horses, do they match your ranch?" Morgan hesitated. "Well, no, but then they were probably rebranded by whoever stole them originally, or they were never yours to begin with," Nora continued. Her heart was pounding, but her voice remained level. "Seems to me the marshal should wire Cotulla. Check if there's a Carson ranch. See if horses were reported stolen. That's what the law says, isn't it, Marshal Tucker?" Tucker looked relieved to have an out. "Miss Camden's right. We'll hold him in jail while I check out his story. If it's false, he'll hang. If it's true, he walks. That's how we do things proper." The crowd grumbled, but they dispersed. Morgan shot Nora a look that suggested he wouldn't forget this, but she had survived worse than Bill Morgan's displeasure. As the marshal hauled the young man to his feet, those defiant eyes found Nora's, and something passed between them. Gratitude, yes, but also recognition, as though he saw something in her that others missed. The marshal led him away, and Nora returned to her store, her hands finally starting to shake now that the confrontation was over. She didn't know why she had spoken up. It wasn't wise to make enemies of powerful ranchers, but something about the young man's eyes, the way he had maintained his dignity even facing death, had compelled her to act. 3 days later, she was arranging tins on a shelf when the door opened and he walked in. He was clean now. The cut above his eyebrows scabbed over, wearing the same trail-worn clothes but standing straight and free. Marshall got confirmation from Catulla, he said without preamble. Carson's ranch exists. He sold off his horses 3 weeks ago, including 3 that matched the descriptions perfectly. Morgan had to admit he was wrong, though he didn't look happy about it. I imagine not, Nora said, keeping her attention on the tins even as her pulse quickened. I'm told you're the reason I didn't hang, he continued. The marshal said if you hadn't spoken up, the crowd would have had me before he could stop them. You're told correctly, she replied. He moved closer, and she could smell leather and soap and something earthy like sage. Why did you do it? You don't know me. Finally, she turned to face him fully. Up close, his eyes were a startling shade of blue-gray like storm clouds. There was a scar on his chin, and his hands had the calluses of hard work. Because hanging an innocent man would have been wrong, and I've seen enough wrong in this world to recognize it. He studied her for a long moment. Marcus Sullivan, he said, extending his hand, and I owe you my life, Miss Camden. She took his hand, and his grip was warm and firm. Nora, and you don't owe me anything. I just told the truth. That's more than most people would have done, Marcus said, especially risking Bill Morgan's anger. Morgan doesn't scare me, Nora said, releasing his hand though part of her wanted to hold on longer. I've weathered worse than petty ranchers with inflated egos. A smile tugged at Marcus's mouth, the first she had seen from him. It transformed his face, made him look younger and less guarded. I believe you. The way you stood there calm as Sunday morning while everyone else was ready to string me up, I thought you must be either fearless or crazy. Maybe a bit of both, Nora admitted. Now, was there something you needed from the store, or did you just come to satisfy your curiosity about the woman who saved your neck? Both, Marcus said honestly. I need supplies for the trail, but I also wanted to see you again. Wanted to properly thank you. Consider yourself thanked, Nora said, moving behind the counter to create some professional distance even as her heart continued its uncomfortable racing. Now, what supplies do you need? As Marcus listed items and she gathered them, they fell into easy conversation. He told her he was a ranch hand, had been working in Catulla, but the ranch went under when the owner died, and the widow sold everything off. He was heading west to find new work, heard there were ranches hiring up toward San Antonio. Why stop in Laredo if you're heading to San Antonio? Nora asked, wrapping his purchases in brown paper. Needed to rest my horse, restock supplies, Marcus said. Didn't count on nearly getting hanged in the process. Life's full of surprises, Nora said dryly, and he laughed, a rich sound that seemed to fill the store. When she tallied up his bill, Marcus counted out coins carefully. She could see he didn't have much. Probably everything he owned was in that saddlebag. On impulse, she reduced the total by half. That's not right, Marcus said, frowning. You charged me too little. My store, my prices, Nora replied. Consider it compensation for nearly getting hanged in my town. I can pay full price, Marcus insisted, and there was pride in his voice. I don't need charity. It's not charity, it's a discount for a new customer, Nora said firmly. And don't insult me by arguing when a woman gives you a fair deal. Their eyes locked, and something electric seemed to crackle in the air between them. Finally, Marcus nodded slowly. Thank you, he said quietly, for everything. He should have left then, Should have taken his supplies, mounted his horse, and ridden off toward San Antonio and whatever future waited there. But he lingered, and Nora found herself not wanting him to go. "When are you leaving?" she asked, trying to sound casual. "Was planning to head out at first light tomorrow," Marcus said. "But I'm thinking maybe I'll stay another day or two. Make sure my horse is fully rested, maybe look around town, see if there's any work here." "There's always work for a good ranch hand," Nora heard herself saying. "The Martinez spread north of town is always hiring, and the Carson place, no relation to the man in Catulla, needs help with their cattle drive next month." "Maybe I'll check those out," Marcus said. And the way he looked at her made it clear he wasn't just interested in employment opportunities. He did check them out. And when Miguel Martinez offered him a job at decent wages with a bunk in the ranch house, Marcus accepted. Nora told herself it was none of her business, that she shouldn't feel this flutter of excitement knowing he would be staying in the area. But she did feel it. And when Marcus started coming into the store regularly for supplies, she found herself looking forward to his visits more than was probably wise. They talked while she measured out flour or cut fabric or tallied accounts. He told her about growing up on a small ranch in Oklahoma, how his parents had died in a Comanche raid when he was 15, how he had been working ranches ever since, moving from place to place, but never quite finding anywhere that felt like home. She told him about losing her parents, about keeping the store running through floods and droughts and economic downturns, about the bone-deep loneliness that came from always being strong and never having anyone to lean on. "You ever think about leaving?" Marcus asked one afternoon while she was helping him select a new shirt, his old one having been torn beyond repair during a rough day with the cattle. "Going somewhere new, starting fresh?" "Every day," Nora admitted, holding up 2 shirts for his inspection. "But this store is all I have. My father built it. My mother helped run it. Their whole lives are in these walls. I can't just abandon that." "That's not living, though," Marcus said gently. "That's haunting your own life." His words struck deep because they were true. "What about you?" she countered. "You move from place to place, never settling. Is that living or just running?" "Fair point," Marcus acknowledged. He chose the blue shirt, and when she measured his shoulders to ensure the fit, the proximity made her breath catch. "Maybe we're both stuck in our own ways." "Maybe we are," Nora agreed softly. The summer heat intensified, and with it came the kind of storm season that made even hardened Texans nervous. The Rio Grande was running high from rains to the north, and everyone watched it warily. Laredo had flooded before, and it could flood again. Marcus came into town on a Saturday evening in late July, his face grave. "Miguel says the river's rising fast. There's word from upstream that a levee broke near El Coyote. If the water comes this far, it'll be bad." Nora's stomach clenched, but her voice remained steady. "How much time do we have?" "Maybe 12 hours, maybe less," Marcus said. "Miguel's organizing the hands to move livestock to higher ground. The marshal's spreading the word that folks should prepare to evacuate if it gets worse." "I need to move inventory to the second floors," Nora said immediately, her mind already calculating what could be saved. "The heavy items will have to stay, but I can get the dry goods up, the fabrics, anything that water would ruin." "I'll help you," Marcus said. "You should be helping Miguel with the livestock," Nora protested. "He's got plenty of hands for that," Marcus replied. "And you saved my life. Least I can do is help save your livelihood." They worked through the night, carrying boxes and crates and barrels up the narrow stairs to Nora's living quarters. Other townspeople were doing the same, the streets full of activity despite the late hour. The wind picked up, bringing the smell of rain, and in the distance thunder rolled like artillery. Around 3 a.m. they paused to catch their breath. Nora's arms ached, her back screamed in protest, but they had managed to move most of the valuable inventory. Marcus wiped sweat from his forehead and looked at her with something like awe. "You haven't complained once," he said. "Haven't panicked, haven't broken down, just kept working?" "Complaining won't stop the flood," Nora said practically, "and I learned a long time ago that panic just wastes energy you need for surviving." "That's what everyone means when they say you can weather any storm," Marcus said. "You don't just survive them. You stand firm while everything else gets swept away." "Not by choice," Nora said, suddenly tired in a way that had nothing to do with physical exhaustion. I just don't know how to be any other way anymore. Marcus moved closer, and in the dim lamplight his expression was impossibly tender. Maybe you don't have to weather the storms alone anymore. Before she could respond, before she could think about what that meant, the rain started. Not a gentle rain, but a deluge, water falling so hard it sounded like handfuls of gravel hitting the roof. They ran to close windows, but within minutes water was running down the street in rivers. "The levee must have given way completely," Marcus shouted over the roar of the storm. "This is going to be bad." He was right. By dawn, the lower part of town was under 3 feet of water. Nora's store was flooded, the merchandise they couldn't move ruined. But her living quarters were dry, and she watched from her window as the town struggled to cope with the disaster. Marcus had stayed with her through the night, maintaining propriety by sleeping on the floor while she took her bed, though neither of them had slept much. Now he stood beside her at the window, and she was acutely aware of his presence, his warmth, the way his arm occasionally brushed hers. "At least no one's been killed," he said. "Could have been worse." "It can always be worse," Nora agreed. "That's not exactly comforting, but it's true." The water took 3 days to recede. When Nora finally waded into her store, surveying the mud and debris and ruined goods, she wanted to scream, wanted to cry, wanted to give up, but she didn't. She rolled up her sleeves, grabbed a shovel, and started cleaning. Marcus appeared an hour later with Miguel and 3 other ranch hands. "We got the livestock safe," he said. "Now we're helping with cleanup. Miguel says you can pay us in store credit once you're back on your feet." Nora's throat tightened with gratitude. "That's generous." "That's what neighbors do," Miguel said in his accented English. "And besides, we need you open. You're the best stock store between here and San Antonio." They worked for days, mucking out the store, salvaging what they could, disposing of what was ruined. Nora tallied up her losses and knew it would take months to recover financially. But the alternative was giving up, and that wasn't in her nature. Marcus was there every evening after his ranch work was done, helping with repairs, replacing broken boards, fixing shelves. They worked side by side, and somewhere in the exhaustion and determination, something shifted between them. The conversations grew more personal, the silences more comfortable, the accidental touches less accidental. One evening, as the sun set and painted the sky in shades of orange and purple, they sat on the store's front steps, too tired to move. Nora's dress was filthy. Her hair had long since escaped its pins, and she had never felt less attractive. But when Marcus looked at her, his eyes held something she was almost afraid to name. "You're remarkable," he said quietly. "Anyone else would have given up, sold out, moved on, but here you are, rebuilding." "I don't feel remarkable," Nora admitted. "I feel tired and scared and so damn alone sometimes I can barely breathe." "You're not alone," Marcus said, and he took her hand. His palm was rough with calluses, his fingers strong, and the simple touch sent warmth flooding through her. "Not anymore. Not if you don't want to be." Nora turned to look at him fully. "Marcus, what are you saying?" "I'm saying I came to this town expecting to stay a few days at most," he said, his blue-gray eyes intense. "I'm saying I nearly got hanged and you saved me. I'm saying I've been drifting for 10 years, and for the first time since my parents died, I feel like I might have found a place worth staying, not because of the job or the town, but because of you." Her heart hammered against her ribs. "You barely know me." "I know enough," Marcus said. "I know you're strong and brave and kind. I know you face down drunk cowboys and angry mobs without flinching. I know you work yourself to exhaustion, rebuilding what a flood destroyed without complaining once. I know that when you smile, which isn't often enough, it feels like the sun coming out. And I know that I think about you every waking moment and dream about you when I sleep." "Marcus," she whispered, and she didn't know if she was protesting or encouraging. "I'm not asking for promises," he said quickly. "I know it's too soon, that we need time, but I want you to know how I feel. I want you to know that if you'll let me, I'd like to court you properly. Take you to church socials and Sunday dinners and whatever else people do in this town when they're trying to win someone's heart." Nora's eyes stung with tears she rarely allowed herself. "What if you get restless? What if you decide to move on like you always have?" "I won't," Marcus said with absolute certainty, "because I finally understand what I was looking for all those years. It wasn't a place. It was a person. It was you." She kissed him then. Or maybe he kissed her, but suddenly his lips were on hers and it was soft and tentative and perfect. When they pulled apart, both breathing hard, Nora felt something unlock in her chest, some frozen part of herself beginning to thaw. "Yes," she said, "yes, you can court me. Yes, to Sunday dinners and church socials and whatever else people do." Marcus's smile was brilliant. "Yeah?" "Yeah," Nora confirmed. And then she was laughing, actually laughing with pure joy, something she couldn't remember doing in years. The courtship that followed was a revelation. Marcus proved to be attentive and thoughtful, showing up with wildflowers he had picked on the range, helping her with heavy lifting in the store, walking her home every evening regardless of how late he had to ride back to the Martinez ranch. He was unfailingly respectful, never pushing for more than she was ready to give, content to hold her hand or steal a kiss on the porch while the stars wheeled overhead. Nora found herself changing too. She smiled more, laughed easier. The armor she had built around herself began to crack, and instead of feeling vulnerable, she felt free. She told Marcus things she had never told anyone. About the nights after her parents died when she had cried until she made herself sick, about the crushing responsibility of running the business, about the fear that she would die alone and forgotten in this dusty border town. "You won't die alone," Marcus promised her one Sunday afternoon as they walked along the river, now back within its banks and sparkling peacefully in the sunlight. "You're stuck with me now, Nora Camden, whether you like it or not." "I think I like it," she admitted, leaning into his side. The town noticed, of course. There were whispers and speculation, but mostly there was approval. Nora was well-liked, if not particularly close to anyone, and Marcus had proven himself a hard worker and decent man. Even Bill Morgan, who might have held a grudge, seemed to accept the situation with grudging respect. But life in Laredo was never simple for long. In September, a new threat emerged, a gang of outlaws led by a man named Jack Dawson, who were robbing ranches and homesteads along the border. They were vicious and unpredictable, and the small marshal's office was overwhelmed. When they hit the Martinez ranch, while Miguel and most of his hands were out on the range, Marcus was one of only 3 men there to defend the place. The outlaws outnumbered them 2-1, and in the gunfight that followed, Marcus took a bullet to the shoulder. Nora was in the store when Miguel burst through the door, his face pale. "It's Marcus," he said without preamble. "He's been shot. Doc's with him now, but it's bad." The world tilted. Nora gripped the counter for support, and for the first time in her adult life, she felt her legendary composure shatter. "How bad?" "Bullet's still in there. Doc's trying to get it out, but Marcus lost a lot of blood," Miguel said. "Nora, you should come. He's been asking for you." She closed the store without a thought, something she had never done in the middle of the day. Miguel drove her to the ranch in a wagon, and every bump on the road felt like an eternity. Her mind kept replaying every moment with Marcus, every conversation, every smile, every kiss. The thought of losing him was unbearable. The ranch house was chaos when they arrived. Several hands were wounded, and Doc Williams was rushing between them. But Nora pushed past everyone and went straight to the room where Marcus lay on a bed, his face ashen, his shoulder wrapped in blood-soaked bandages. "Nora?" he managed when he saw her. And despite his obvious pain, he tried to smile. "Sorry to worry you." She sank down beside the bed, taking his uninjured hand in both of hers. "You idiot," she said, her voice breaking. "You absolute idiot." "The outlaws were going to burn the place down," Marcus said weakly. "Had to fight." "I know," Nora said, tears streaming down her face. "I know you did. But if you die on me, Marcus Sullivan, I will never forgive you." "Not planning to die," he assured her. "Got too much to live for." Doc Williams returned then, looking exhausted. "I got the bullet out," he told Nora. "It missed anything vital, but infection's the real danger now. Next few days will tell." "Can I stay with him?" Nora asked. "Probably the best medicine he could have," Doc said with a tired smile. "Just keep the wound clean and make him rest. No getting up, no matter how tough he thinks he is." Nora stayed. Miguel offered her a room in the ranch house, and she spent the next week barely leaving Marcus's side. She changed his bandages, brought him food he barely ate, read to him from books she brought from her store, and most importantly, held his hand through the fevers that came. There were bad moments, times when his temperature spiked so high she was certain she would lose him, when he thrashed and muttered deliriously about his parents and his past and outlaws, but Nora weathered those storms too, bathing his forehead with cool water, talking to him in a steady voice, refusing to let him slip away. On the 5th night, his fever finally broke. Nora had dozed off in the chair beside his bed, her head resting on her arms on the mattress, when she felt his hand move to touch her hair. "Nora," he said, his voice hoarse but clear, "you're still here." She jerked awake, her hand immediately going to his forehead. Cool. His fever was gone. Relief flooded through her so powerfully she started to cry again. "Hey," Marcus said gently, "I'm all right. You can stop crying." "I thought I lost you," Nora said, not bothering to hide her tears. "I thought you were going to die and leave me alone again." "Takes more than a bullet to kill me," Marcus said, trying for levity. But his eyes were serious. "And I meant what I said before. You're not getting rid of me that easily." She kissed him then, careful not to jostle his injured shoulder, pouring all her fear and relief and love into it. When they parted, Marcus was smiling. "Marry me," he said. Nora blinked. "What?" "Marry me," Marcus repeated. "I know it's fast. I know we haven't been courting long, but I nearly died, and all I could think about was you. About not getting to spend my life with you. I don't want to wait anymore. I don't want to be careful or sensible. I just want you, Nora, for the rest of my life, however long that is." "You're delirious from the fever," Nora said. But her heart was racing. "My fever broke. You said so yourself," Marcus pointed out. "I'm thinking more clearly than I have in days. Marry me, please." Nora looked at him. This man who had come into her life by accident, who had shown her what it meant to not be alone, who had fought outlaws and survived a gunshot and was now looking at her with such love and hope that it took her breath away. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I'll marry you." Marcus's smile was radiant. "Really?" "Really, Nora confirmed. "But you have to promise me you'll stop getting shot." "I'll do my best," Marcus said, and then he was pulling her down for another kiss. And despite his weakness, despite the bandages and the pain he must still be in, it was the sweetest kiss Nora had ever experienced. They married in October in the small church in Laredo with half the town in attendance. Nora wore a simple cream dress she had sewn herself, and Marcus wore his best suit that Miguel had helped him pick out in San Antonio during a supply run. Marshall Tucker gave Nora away since she had no family, and Miguel stood up as Marcus's best man. It wasn't a fancy wedding, but it was perfect. When Marcus said his vows, his voice was strong and clear despite his shoulder still being in a sling. "I promise to stand by you through every storm," he said, and everyone knew he meant it literally and figuratively. "I promise to be the man you can lean on so you don't always have to be the strong one. I promise to love you until my last breath and beyond." Nora's own vows were simpler, but no less heartfelt. "I promise to trust you with my heart," she said. "I promise to let you in even when it's hard. I promise to weather every storm together because I don't want to face them alone anymore." When the Reverend pronounced them husband and wife, the kiss they shared was chaste enough for church but held a promise of the night to come. The reception was held in the town square, with tables of food and a fiddle player and dancing under the stars. Nora danced with her husband, and the joy she felt was almost frightening in its intensity. "What are you thinking?" Marcus asked as they swayed to a slow song. "That I'm happy," Nora admitted. "That I didn't know I could be this happy. That it scares me." "Why does it scare you?" Marcus asked gently. "Because now I have something to lose," Nora said. "Before you I had the store and I cared about it, but it was just a building. Now I have you, and the thought of anything happening to you makes me want to hide away from the world." "Hey," Marcus said, pulling back to look at her. "Life's always uncertain. That's why we have to hold on tight to what matters. I'm not going anywhere, Nora. You're stuck with me through every storm, remember?" "Through every storm," Nora repeated, and she let herself believe it. They moved into the apartment above the store, which was small but sufficient for newlyweds. Marcus continued working at the Martinez ranch while Nora ran the store, and they fell into an easy rhythm. Marcus would leave before dawn, work the cattle all day, and return to Laredo each evening, where Nora would have dinner waiting. They would eat together, talk about their days, and then retreat to their bed where Marcus would show her with his hands and mouth and body just how much he loved her. Nora blossomed under his attention. The hard edges she had developed softened. She laughed more freely, trusted more easily, and for the first time in years, she felt truly alive rather than just surviving. But the universe seemed determined to test them. In November, a drought began that would last through the winter and into spring. Ranches struggled as water sources dried up and cattle died. The store's business slowed as people had less money to spend. Nora and Marcus tightened their belts, made do with less, but they did it together. Then in January of 1877, a winter storm blew through unlike anything Laredo had seen in years. Texas was no stranger to cold snaps, but this one brought ice and snow that shut down the town for a week. The store's supplies ran low as deliveries couldn't get through, and people began to worry about food shortages. Nora organized rationing, making sure families with children got priority, extending credit to those who needed it. Marcus and the other ranch hands worked brutal hours trying to save as much livestock as possible from the cold. They lost cattle anyway, the frozen animals a grim reminder of nature's power. Through it all, Nora and Marcus held on to each other. When Marcus came home half frozen from a day in the snow, Nora would warm him by the fire, wrap him in blankets, feed him hot soup. When Nora lay awake worrying about bills and inventory and whether they would make it through, Marcus held her close and reminded her that they had survived worse. "We're going to be all right," he would say. "We have each other. That's what matters." And they were all right. The storm passed, spring came early, and the drought finally broke with rains in March. The town recovered, the ranches recovered, and the store's business picked up. By summer, they were not just surviving but thriving. It was in August that Nora realized she had missed her monthly courses twice. She didn't say anything at first, afraid to hope, but when September came and went with no sign, she finally told Marcus. They were in bed, the windows open to catch any breeze in the hot night. Marcus was tracing lazy patterns on her arm when she said, "I think I'm pregnant." His hand stilled. "You think, or you know?" "I'm fairly certain," Nora said. "All the signs are there. I've been tired, nauseous in the mornings, and I'm 3 months late now." Marcus sat up abruptly, his face a mixture of shock and joy. "We're having a baby?" "We're having a baby," Nora confirmed, and saying it out loud made it real in a way it hadn't been before. Marcus let out a whoop of joy that probably woke half the neighbors, then pulled Nora into his arms, covering her face with kisses. "We're having a baby," he kept repeating. "I'm going to be a father." "Are you happy?" Nora asked, needing to hear it. "Happy doesn't begin to cover it," Marcus said. "Nora, you've given me everything. A home, a purpose, love, and now a child. I never thought I'd have any of that." "I never thought I would either," Nora admitted. "I thought I'd spend my life alone in this store, just enduring until I died. But then you came along and changed everything." Best day of my life was when you stepped up to save a horse thief you'd never met, Marcus said with a grin. Well, second best now, this is the best. They told the town after Nora was clearly showing around Christmas of 1877. The congratulations were genuine and enthusiastic. Dr. Williams examined her and pronounced her healthy, though he warned that childbirth was always risky. You're strong, though, he told Nora. If anyone can weather it, you can. Nora tried not to think about all the ways childbirth could go wrong. She had known women who died, babies who didn't survive. The frontier was harsh and medical care was limited, but she also knew there was no point in borrowing trouble. She would face whatever came when it came, and Marcus would be there with her. Marcus was simultaneously excited and terrified about becoming a father. He read every book on children he could find, asked advice from older ranch hands who had families, and started building a cradle in his spare time. His devotion was both touching and amusing. The baby won't arrive for months yet, Nora reminded him when she found him frantically sanding the cradle for the third time. And I don't think babies notice if their cradle has a few rough edges. Our baby will have the smoothest cradle in Texas, Marcus declared, and Nora couldn't help but smile. As her belly grew, Marcus became increasingly protective. He didn't want her lifting anything heavy, working too long hours, or doing anything that might be even remotely dangerous. Nora found it both sweet and frustrating. I'm pregnant, not made of glass, she said after Marcus physically prevented her from moving a box of fabric that weighed maybe 10 pounds. I know, Marcus said, but you're carrying our child, my child. I can't lose either of you, Nora. I wouldn't survive it. His vulnerability touched her. You won't lose us, she promised. I'm strong, remember? I can weather any storm. I know you can, Marcus said, but maybe you don't have to weather this one alone. Maybe you can let me help carry some of the burden. So Nora let him help. Let him take on more of the physical labor in the store, let him fuss over her even when it felt excessive, and she found that it wasn't weakness to accept help. It was just another way of weathering the storms together. The baby came in April of 1878, on a warm spring night when the air smelled of bluebonnets and new grass. Nora's labor started in the late afternoon, and Marcus immediately sent for Doc Williams and the midwife, Mrs. O'Brien, who had delivered half the babies in Laredo. The labor was long and difficult. Nora had weathered many storms, but the pain of childbirth was unlike anything she had experienced. She screamed and swore, and at one point told Marcus she hated him for doing this to her, which he took with remarkable grace. You're doing wonderfully, Mrs. O'Brien kept saying. Just a bit more, dear. You're strong, you can do this. And she did. As dawn broke over Laredo, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Nora gave one final push, and their baby entered the world with a lusty cry. It's a boy, Doc Williams announced, and placed the squalling, red-faced infant on Nora's chest. Nora looked down at her son, at his tiny fists and dark hair, and eyes that would probably be blue like his father's, and felt a rush of love so powerful it was almost painful. Hello, she whispered to him. Hello, little one. Marcus was crying openly, his hand gentle on the baby's head. He's perfect, he said hoarsely. He's absolutely perfect. You're perfect. God, Nora, you're amazing. They named him Matthew Camden Sullivan, honoring both their family names. Matthew, who they called Matt from the start, was a colicky baby who cried often and slept little. But neither Nora nor Marcus cared. He was theirs, this little life they had created, and they were completely besotted. The first months were exhausting. Nora had never been so tired in her life, but it was a different kind of tired than the bone-deep exhaustion of grief and loneliness. This was the tiredness of love, of getting up in the night to feed a hungry baby, of rocking a fussy infant while Marcus took his turn, of watching her husband become a father before her eyes. Marcus took to fatherhood with enthusiasm and dedication. He would spend hours just holding Matt, talking to him in a gentle voice, singing off-key lullabies. He changed diapers without complaint, walked the floor with their son at 3 a.m, and looked at both Nora and Matt as though they had hung the moon. "I can't believe this is my life," he said one evening as they sat together, Matt finally asleep in his cradle. "A year and a half ago, I was nearly hanged in this town. Now I'm married to the most incredible woman I've ever met, with a son, a home, a purpose. How did I get so lucky?" "It wasn't luck," Nora said, leaning against him. "It was you being in the right place at the right time. It was me speaking up when I shouldn't have. It was both of us choosing each other every day since." "I'll keep choosing you," Marcus promised, "every day for the rest of my life." As Matt grew from infant to toddler, Nora and Marcus settled into their life together. They faced the challenges that came with a small child and running a business and ranch work, but they faced them together. When Matt got sick with croup at 8 months, they took turns sitting up with him, keeping him upright so he could breathe. When the store had a particularly bad quarter financially, they figured out together how to cut costs and increase business. When Marcus was thrown from a horse and broke his arm, Nora nursed him back to health just as she had after he was shot. Through it all, their love deepened. The passionate early days evolved into something richer and more complex. They knew each other's moods and habits, knew when to push and when to give space, knew how to comfort and challenge and support. They argued sometimes, usually about money or how to discipline Matt as he got older, but they always worked through it. The town watched their marriage with approval and perhaps a bit of envy. Nora and Marcus were that rare thing, a genuinely happy couple. They still held hands when they walked down the street, still stole kisses when they thought no one was looking, still gazed at each other with obvious love even after years of marriage. In the spring of 1881, when Matt was 3 years old, Nora discovered she was pregnant again. This pregnancy was easier than the first, perhaps because she knew what to expect, and in December she gave birth to their second son. They named him James Sullivan, and he was a quiet baby who slept through the night almost from the start, the complete opposite of his colicky older brother. Marcus was in heaven with 2 sons. He had dreams of them working the ranch together someday, of building something lasting to pass on. Miguel had offered to sell Marcus a partnership in the Martinez spread, and after much discussion, Nora and Marcus had accepted. It meant stretching their finances thin for a while, but it was an investment in their future. The store continued to do well under Nora's management. She had hired a young woman named Sarah to help part-time, which allowed Nora to spend more time with her boys while still keeping the business running. It was a delicate balance, but Nora had spent her whole life balancing on knife edges. At least now she had Marcus to catch her if she fell. Matt grew into a bright, energetic boy who followed his father everywhere when Marcus was home, asking endless questions about horses and cattle and ranch life. Jamie, as they called young James, was quieter but just as curious, more likely to be found with a book than playing rough games. "They're so different," Nora marveled one evening as she watched Matt run circles around the yard while Jamie sat on the porch examining a bug. "Takes after you," Marcus said, nodding toward Jamie. "Observant, thoughtful." "And Matt takes after you," Nora countered. "All energy and enthusiasm and jumping in without looking." "That's how I got you," Marcus said with a grin. "Jumped in without looking and landed in the best place of my life." As the boys grew, Nora and Marcus faced new challenges. In the summer of 1883, a disease swept through the cattle, killing dozens before they could contain it. The financial loss was significant, putting their partnership in jeopardy. Nora liquidated some of the store's stock at reduced prices to raise cash, and they barely managed to weather that storm. Then in 1884, there was a string of bank robberies in the area, and when the outlaws came through Laredo, they tried to rob the store. Nora was there alone when they burst in, and for a moment, she was transported back to all those times she had faced down danger without flinching. "Give us the money," the lead outlaw demanded, pointing a gun at her. Nora looked at him calmly, her heart racing but her hands steady. "The money's in the safe, and only my husband knows the combination. He'll be back this evening." It was a lie. Nora knew the combination, but she also knew that giving them the money meant giving up everything she and Marcus had worked for. The outlaw moved closer, pressing the gun to her temple. "Open it, or I'll paint these walls with your brains." "Then you'll never get the money," Nora said evenly, "and you'll have killed a woman for nothing. Is that really how you want this to go?" Her calm seemed to unsettle them. People who stayed composed in the face of death were unpredictable, dangerous in their own way. The outlaw hesitated, and in that moment Marcus burst through the door with Marshal Tucker and several armed townsmen. The outlaws were captured without a shot fired, and Marcus pulled Nora into his arms, trembling. "I thought I was going to lose you," he said against her hair. "When Mrs. Henderson told me outlaws were in the store, I thought my heart would stop." "I'm fine," Nora assured him. "I can weather any storm, remember?" "Maybe," Marcus said, pulling back to look at her. "But you shouldn't have to keep proving it. Why didn't you just give them the money?" "Because that money represents our future," Nora said. "Our boy's future. I wasn't going to give it up without a fight." "I'd rather lose every penny we have than lose you," Marcus said fiercely. "Money we can replace. You, I cannot." It was a reminder, if Nora needed one, of how much Marcus loved her. And she realized that maybe her willingness to weather every storm wasn't always strength. Sometimes it was stubbornness, a refusal to admit vulnerability. But Marcus had shown her over the years that vulnerability wasn't weakness, it was trust. The years rolled on, bringing their joys and sorrows, triumphs and struggles. In 1886, Nora gave birth to a daughter they named Lily, and Marcus was beside himself with joy at having a little girl. In 1887, Miguel died suddenly of a heart attack, leaving Marcus as the full owner of the ranch, a bittersweet transition. The boys grew, Matt becoming more like Marcus every day, Jamie developing Nora's love of books and learning, and Lily proving to be a perfect combination of both parents. Through it all, Nora and Marcus weathered the storms together. When drought came, when cattle prices dropped, when children got sick, when money was tight, when the roof leaked and the fences broke and life felt overwhelming, they held on to each other. On a warm evening in May of 1891, 15 years after Marcus had nearly been hanged in Laredo, Nora and Marcus sat on the porch of the home they had built on the ranch property. The store still operated in town with Sarah running it most days, but they had moved to the ranch when it became fully theirs. Matt, now 13, was helping the hands with the evening chores. Jamie, 11, was inside reading to 8-year-old Lily. "Do you ever think about that first day?" Marcus asked, his arm around Nora's shoulders. "When you saved my life?" "Sometimes," Nora admitted. "I think about how close you came to dying, how I almost didn't speak up." "What made you?" Marcus asked. It was a question he had asked before, but the answer always seemed to evolve. "I don't know if I can explain it," Nora said slowly. "Maybe I saw something in you, some quality I recognized. Or maybe I was just tired of watching bad things happen without doing anything. But in that moment, speaking up felt like the only choice I could live with." "Best choice you ever made?" Marcus teased. "Second best," Nora corrected with a smile. "Best choice was saying yes when you asked me to marry you." "I love you," Marcus said, kissing her temple. "Still, always, forever." "I love you too," Nora replied, "through every storm." And there had been storms, both literal and figurative, but they had weathered them all together. And Nora finally understood that true strength wasn't facing storms alone. True strength was knowing when to hold on to someone, knowing when to let yourself be held, and trusting that love was the anchor that would keep you steady when everything else tried to sweep you away. As the sun set over the Texas prairie, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink and purple, Nora leaned into Marcus's embrace and felt profoundly grateful. Grateful for the twist of fate that had brought them together, grateful for every storm they had weathered, grateful for the life they had built stone by stone, day by day, choice by choice. Matt came running up to the porch full of energy despite a long day of work. "Pa, one of the mares is foaling. Do you want to come watch?" Marcus looked at Nora and she nodded. "Go on," she said. "I'll get dinner started." But Marcus pulled her to her feet. "Come with us," he said. "All of us together." So they called Jamie and Lily out, and the whole family walked to the barn to witness new life entering the world. It was moments like these, Nora thought, that made everything worthwhile. The struggles and the storms and the times when she had wanted to give up. She had weathered them all and found herself here, surrounded by love and family and purpose. The mare gave birth to a healthy foal, and the children were entranced watching the gangly newborn struggle to stand on shaky legs. Marcus stood behind Nora, his arms wrapped around her, and she laced her fingers through his. "This is everything," Marcus murmured in her ear. "This right here, us, our family, our life. This is everything I ever wanted and didn't know I needed." "Me too," Nora said softly. "I spent so many years just surviving, just weathering one storm after another alone. I didn't know life could be like this." "Like what?" Marcus asked. "Full," Nora said simply. "Full of love and joy and purpose, full of you and the children and this life we've built. I didn't know I could be this happy." The years continued to pass, each one bringing its own challenges and triumphs. Matt grew into a fine young man who worked the ranch alongside his father. Jamie went off to San Antonio to study law, the first person in either of their families to pursue higher education. Lily grew into a beautiful young woman who had her mother's strength and her father's warmth. Nora and Marcus grew older together, their hair graying, their bodies bearing the marks of hard work and hard-won happiness. But their love never diminished. If anything, it grew stronger with each passing year, deepened by shared experience and mutual respect, and the kind of intimacy that comes from truly knowing another person. They faced more storms, of course. That was the nature of life, especially life on the Texas frontier. There was a terrible winter in 1895 that killed half their herd. There was the year Jamie got pneumonia at university, and Nora and Marcus made the difficult journey to San Antonio to nurse him back to health. There was the day Matt announced he was getting married to a girl from a neighboring ranch, and Nora had to learn to share her son with another woman. There was the heartbreak when Lily's first love married someone else, and Nora held her weeping daughter and remembered her own years of loneliness. But there were triumphs, too. The ranch prospered under Marcus's management and Matt's youthful energy. Jamie graduated at the top of his class and opened a law practice in Laredo, proudly serving the community where he was raised. Lily eventually found love with a teacher who moved to Laredo from New Orleans, and their wedding was the event of the season. Grandchildren arrived. First Matt and his wife's son, then Lily and her husband's twin daughters, then more over the years until family gatherings required multiple tables and considerable logistical planning. Nora watched Marcus with his grandchildren and fell in love with him all over again, seeing the same patience and joy he had shown with their own children. On a warm spring evening in 1906, 30 years after they first met, Nora and Marcus sat on the porch of the ranch house, watching the sunset. They were both in their 50s now, worn but not defeated by decades of hard work and hard living. Their hands were clasped together, fingers intertwined in a grip made automatic by years of practice. "Do you have any regrets?" Nora asked suddenly. Marcus looked at her in surprise. "Regrets? About what?" "About your life, about staying in Laredo, about marrying me," Nora said. "You were so young when we met, and you had been planning to move on, to keep drifting. Do you ever wonder what your life might have been if I hadn't spoken up that day?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment, and Nora felt a flutter of anxiety. But when he spoke, his voice was firm and sure. "Not once," he said, "not one single time have I regretted staying here or marrying you. Do you know what my life was before you? I was running, Nora, running from the pain of losing my parents, running from the fear of caring about anything or anyone, running from myself. I told myself I was looking for something, but really I was just avoiding everything." He turned to face her fully, his blue-gray eyes intense in the fading light. "Then I met you, and for the first time since I was 15 years old, I felt like I had found what I was looking for, not a place, but a person. Someone who understood what it meant to survive, to endure, to face storms without breaking. Someone strong enough to weather anything life threw at us, but also brave enough to let someone else share that burden. I wasn't very good at that last part at first, Nora admitted. Neither was I, Marcus said with a smile. But we learned together, and we built this incredible life together. 3 amazing children, grandchildren, a successful ranch, a respected place in the community. But more than any of that, we built a love that has sustained us through everything. That's what I'm proudest of. Not the ranch or the money or the legacy, but the fact that after 30 years, I still wake up every morning grateful that you saved my life in more ways than one. Nora's eyes filled with tears. You saved mine too, she said. I was so lonely before you, so isolated. I had convinced myself that being strong meant being alone, that needing someone was weakness. You showed me I was wrong. We saved each other, Marcus said, pulling her close. That's what people who love each other do. They hold on through the storms. As the sun dipped below the horizon and the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, they sat in comfortable silence. Around them, the ranch that they had built together hummed with life. Cattle lowed in the distance, horses whinnied in the corrals, and from inside the house came the sounds of family as Matt and his wife and children had come for Sunday dinner. Nora thought about all the storms they had weathered together over the years, the literal ones, floods and droughts and blizzards and heat waves, the metaphorical ones, financial hardships, illness, loss, the ordinary struggles of raising children and running a business and making a life in a harsh land. They had faced every single one together, and they had not just survived but thrived. I love you, she said. The words as true now as the first time she had said them all those years ago. I love you too, Marcus replied, always and forever, through every storm. And as night fell over the Texas prairie, Nora Camden Sullivan, the woman who could weather any storm, sat safe in the arms of the cowboy who had held onto her through everyone. Their love, forged in adversity and strengthened by time, was the anchor that had kept them both steady through 3 decades of storms. And as they looked ahead to whatever years remained, they knew that as long as they had each other, they could weather anything else life brought their way. The peaceful moment was interrupted by young voices calling from inside. Grandma, Grandpa, dinner's ready. Marcus helped Nora to her feet with old-fashioned gallantry, and hand in hand, they walked inside to join their family. The dining table was crowded with loved ones, their children's spouses, their grandchildren ranging from toddlers to teenagers. The noise level was considerable, the chaos manageable only by long practice. As they ate and talked and laughed, Nora looked around the table and felt her heart swell with gratitude. This was what all the storms had been for, this family, this love, this legacy. Not the ranch or the money or the respect they had earned, but these people gathered around this table who carried forward the love that she and Marcus had built. Matt caught her looking and raised his glass. A toast, he said, and everyone quieted. To Ma and Pa who showed us all what love looks like, what partnership looks like, what it means to weather storms together. Thank you for the example you set and the family you built. To Ma and Pa, everyone echoed, raising their glasses. Nora felt tears prick her eyes again, but these were happy tears. Marcus squeezed her hand under the table, and she squeezed back. 30 years of storms, and here they were, surrounded by love and family and everything that mattered. After dinner, after the dishes were washed and the grandchildren were tucked into bed in various rooms throughout the house, Nora and Marcus retreated to their bedroom. It was a comfortable room. Nothing fancy, but it was theirs. The bed they had shared for 3 decades, the furniture Marcus had built with his own hands, the photographs of their family on the walls. As they prepared for bed, moving around each other in the practice dance of long marriage, Marcus said, "You know what I realized today?" "What's that?" Nora asked, taking down her hair from its pins. "That every storm we weathered together made us stronger," Marcus said, "not just as individuals, but as a couple. The floods and the droughts and the financial hardships and the illnesses, all of it. Every time we faced something difficult and came through it together, we built more trust, more intimacy, more understanding. That's a very philosophical observation for bedtime, Nora teased, but she understood what he meant. I'm serious, Marcus said, coming to stand behind her at the mirror. His hands settled on her shoulders, and their eyes met in the reflection. When I think about our marriage, I don't think about the easy times. I think about the hard ones. I think about sitting by your bedside when you nearly died giving birth to Jamie. I think about you nursing me back to health after I got shot. I think about holding each other when Miguel died, when your store flooded, when we thought we might lose everything. Those are the moments that defined us. Because those are the moments when we could have lost each other, Nora said quietly. When it would have been easier to give up, to run away, to face things alone like we both used to do. Exactly, Marcus said. But we didn't. We held on to each other, and that made all the difference. They climbed into bed, and Nora settled into her favorite position, her head on Marcus's chest, his arm around her. His heartbeat was steady beneath her ear, a sound as familiar as her own breathing. This was home, she thought. Not the ranch or the house, but this. Marcus's arms, his heartbeat, his presence beside her. Do you think we'll have many more years? Nora asked softly. I don't know, Marcus said honestly. We're not young anymore. But however many years we have, we'll face them together. And when my time comes, I'll go knowing I lived the best life possible because I loved you and you loved me and we built something beautiful together. Don't talk about dying, Nora said, even though she knew it was inevitable. Not tonight. All right, Marcus agreed. What should we talk about instead? Tell me again, Nora said. Tell me again how you felt when you first saw me. Marcus chuckled. Haven't I told you that story 100 times? Tell me again, Nora insisted. So Marcus did, his voice soft in the darkness. I was on my knees in the dirt, hands tied, surrounded by angry men who wanted to hang me. I was trying to be brave, trying not to show fear, but honestly, I was terrified. Then I heard this clear, calm voice cutting through the chaos. I looked up and saw this woman with dark hair and gray eyes standing there like she faced down lynch mobs every day. You weren't afraid. Not of the crowd or the situation or anything. You just stated facts in that steady voice of yours and changed everything. I was afraid, Nora confessed. My heart was racing. But you didn't show it, Marcus said. That's what struck me. Your courage, your composure. And then later, when you came back to the store and I really looked at you, I saw beyond the calm exterior. I saw the loneliness, the burden you carried, the way you had built walls to protect yourself. And I thought, here's someone who understands. Here's someone who has weathered storms just like I have. And you decided you wanted me, Nora said. I decided I needed you, Marcus corrected. There's a difference. Wanting is about desire, and I definitely desired you. But needing, that's about recognizing that another person completes something in you. You were the piece of myself I didn't know was missing. That's beautiful, Nora whispered. It's true, Marcus said simply. They fell silent, and gradually Nora felt herself drifting towards sleep. But before she surrendered to it, she said one more thing. Thank you. For what? Marcus asked sleepily. For holding on, Nora said, through every storm, through every difficult moment, through 30 years of life. Thank you for holding on to me. Always Marcus murmured. I'll always hold on to you. And wrapped in each other's arms, they slept. The years continued to unfold, bringing both joy and sorrow as years do. In 1908, Jamie married a fellow lawyer from San Antonio, and their wedding brought both families together in celebration. In 1910, Nora and Marcus celebrated their 32nd anniversary by taking a trip to San Antonio, the first time in years they had left the ranch for more than a day. They stayed in a hotel, ate at restaurants, and felt like newlyweds again, freed temporarily from the responsibilities that defined their daily lives. But in 1912, sorrow struck when Matt's wife died in childbirth, along with the baby. The family mourned together, and Nora and Marcus took in Matt and his older children for several months while he grieved and learned to navigate single fatherhood. Watching her strong, capable son broken by grief, Nora understood anew the cost of love. To love was to risk this kind of pain, but the alternative, a life without love, was no life at all. Marcus was endlessly patient with Matt, having walked his own path through grief as a teenager. "It doesn't stop hurting," he told his son one night when Matt broke down in the barn, away from his children. "But eventually you learn to carry it, and you have those kids to live for, just like I had you and your siblings to live for when things got hard." "Did you ever think about giving up?" Matt asked. "Once or twice," Marcus admitted. "But then I'd look at you kids or at your mother and I'd remember why I kept going. You'll find your way through this, son. We'll help you." And they did. The whole family rallied around Matt, and slowly, painfully, he began to heal. 2 years later, he met a widow with 2 children of her own, and they eventually married, blending their families together. Life, Nora reflected, had a way of continuing even after the worst storms. In the summer of 1915, Nora and Marcus celebrated their 37th anniversary. They were both in their early 60s now, and the years of hard work showed in their weathered faces and work-worn hands. But they were still strong, still active, still deeply in love. On their anniversary, their children threw them a party at the ranch. Friends and family came from all over, and the celebration lasted well into the night. There was food and music and dancing, and at one point, Marcus led Nora out onto the makeshift dance floor just as he had at their wedding all those years ago. "Still got moves, old man," Nora teased as they swayed to a fiddle tune. "Still got the most beautiful woman in Texas in my arms," Marcus countered. "That's all the moves I need." As they danced under the stars, surrounded by the family they had built and the life they had created, Nora felt a profound sense of completeness. Not perfection, because life was never perfect, but completion. A sense that this was exactly where she was meant to be, exactly who she was meant to be with. "What are you thinking?" Marcus asked, reading her expression as he always could. "That I'm grateful," Nora said, "for all of it. The storms and the sunshine, the hard times and the good times, every single moment that led us here." "Me too," Marcus said. "Though I could have done without the getting shot part." Nora laughed. "And I could have done without nearly dying in childbirth twice." "Fair point," Marcus conceded. "But even those moments, as terrible as they were, they taught us something. They showed us what we were capable of surviving together." "We've survived a lot," Nora agreed. "We have," Marcus said, "and we'll survive whatever comes next, too." What came next were more years of ordinary life, punctuated by extraordinary moments. Grandchildren graduated and married, and had children of their own, making Nora and Marcus great grandparents. The ranch continued to prosper under Matt's management, with Jamie handling the legal side of the business and Lily and her husband helping with the books. It was truly a family enterprise now, spanning 3 generations. In 1920, on a warm May evening, very much like the one when Marcus had first proposed, Nora and Marcus sat on their porch watching another sunset. They were both feeling their age now, the decades of hard work taking their toll. Marcus's shoulder, the one that had been shot all those years ago, ached in cold weather. Nora's hands were stiff with arthritis, making fine work difficult. But their love had not diminished. If anything, it had grown even deeper, aged like fine wine into something rich and complex and infinitely precious. 44 years, Marcus said wonderingly. "We've been married 44 years. And been together 45, Nora added. "Since that day you nearly got hanged." "Best worst day of my life," Marcus said with a smile. "Everything that matters started that day." "Do you remember what you said to me the night you proposed?" Nora asked, just after you got shot and recovered. "I said a lot of things that night," Marcus replied. "I was pretty emotional." "You said you didn't want to wait anymore." Didn't want to be careful or sensible, Nora reminded him. You said you just wanted me for the rest of your life. And I meant it, Marcus said firmly, every word. We've had a good life, haven't we? Nora said. It wasn't really a question. The best, Marcus confirmed. Better than I ever dreamed possible for a drifting cowboy who almost got strung up for a crime he didn't commit. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sky fade from orange to purple to deep blue. Stars began to appear. The same stars that had watched over them for more than 4 decades of marriage. Marcus, Nora said quietly, if I go first, don't, Marcus interrupted. If I go first, Nora persisted, I need you to promise me you'll be okay, that you'll lean on the kids and the grandkids, that you won't shut yourself off like you used to do. If you go first, I'll follow soon after, Marcus said simply. I don't know how to be in a world without you anymore. Don't talk like that, Nora said, alarmed. I'm not being morbid, Marcus assured her. I'm just being honest. You're the center of my world, Nora. You have been since the day I met you. I don't know who I am without you. You're Marcus Sullivan, Nora said firmly. Father, grandfather, great-grandfather, rancher, friend, you're all those things independent of me. Maybe, Marcus allowed. But I'm those things because you believed in me first, because you saved my life and then showed me what life could be. Everything I am, everything I've built, it's all because of you. It's because of us, Nora corrected. We built this together, remember? Through every storm, holding on to each other. Through every storm, Marcus repeated, and I'll keep holding on as long as I can. The peaceful moment was interrupted by approaching voices, and soon several of their grandchildren came running up to the porch, full of energy and excitement despite the late hour. Grandma, Grandpa, come inside, their granddaughter Emma called. We're making ice cream. Ice cream sounds good, Marcus said, standing and offering his hand to help Nora up. Even after all these years, the gesture was automatic, instinctive. They walked inside together, their hands clasped as they always were, ready to join their family once more. And as they entered the warm, noisy house filled with the people they loved, Nora thought that this was what weathering storms was really about. Not just surviving them, but building something beautiful in spite of them. Building love and family and legacy that would outlast any temporary difficulty. The seasons turned, and with them came both celebration and loss. In the winter of 1922, Marshall Tucker, long retired, passed away peacefully in his sleep. At his funeral, Nora and Marcus remembered the day he had saved Marcus from the mob, the day that had started everything. He was a good man, Marcus said at the graveside. He gave us our chance. He did, Nora agreed. We owe him everything. In the spring of 1923, they celebrated the birth of their first great-great-grandchild, a boy named Marcus after his great-grandfather. Holding the tiny infant, Marcus Sullivan the elder felt the weight of years and legacy settle on his shoulders like a mantle. 5 generations, he said in wonder. We've created 5 generations, Nora. We did, Nora said, looking at the baby with eyes that had seen so much life. Not bad for a storekeeper and a drifting cowboy. Time continued its relentless march, and in the fall of 1925, on a cool October evening, Nora and Marcus sat together on their porch as they had countless times before. The leaves on the cottonwood trees were turning gold, and there was a crispness in the air that promised winter's approach. We're getting old, Nora observed, not sadly but matter-of-factly. We've been old for a while now, Marcus replied with a slight smile. They were both in their 70s, well beyond the average lifespan for their time. Do you think we've done enough? Nora asked. Built enough, loved enough, lived enough? Marcus took her hand, his grip still strong despite the years. I think we've done more than enough. We've built a family, a legacy, a love that will outlast us. We've faced every storm together and come through stronger. We've lived fully, loved deeply, and created something beautiful. What more could anyone ask for? Nothing, Nora said softly. Nothing more at all. As the sun set on another day, they sat in peaceful silence, content in each other's presence. They had weathered 49 years of storms together, and whatever storms remained, they would face those together too. On a warm spring morning in May of 1926, exactly 50 years after they first met, Nora woke to find Marcus watching her with a smile. "Good morning," he said, his voice rough with sleep but warm with love. "Good morning," Nora replied. "What are you smiling about?" "Do you know what day it is?" Marcus asked. Nora thought for a moment, then her eyes widened. 50 years, she breathed. 50 years since that day in the street. 50 years since the best, worst day of my life, Marcus confirmed. 50 years since you saved me. We saved each other, Nora reminded him, as she always did. Their children had planned a massive celebration for that evening, inviting what seemed like half of Texas to help commemorate 50 years of marriage. But for now, in the quiet of their bedroom, it was just the two of them. "I love you," Marcus said, the words as heartfelt as the first time he had spoken them. "Thank you for 50 years of storms and sunshine, hardship and joy. Thank you for being the woman who could weather any storm, and for letting me hold on to you through every one." Nora's eyes filled with tears, happy tears. "I love you too," she said. "Thank you for holding on. Thank you for never letting go." They kissed, and it was sweet and tender, a kiss that held 50 years of love and partnership and devotion. When they pulled apart, both were smiling. The celebration that evening was everything their children had promised and more. The ranch was filled with family and friends, with music and food and laughter. Nora and Marcus were the center of attention, surrounded by their children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and even the youngest great-great-grandchildren. Speeches were made, toasts were raised, and stories were told about the legendary love story of Nora and Marcus Sullivan, about the day she saved him from hanging, about how they fell in love, about the floods and droughts and hardships they had weathered together, about their unwavering devotion to each other and their family. When it was Marcus's turn to speak, he stood with some difficulty, his body bearing the weight of 72 years. But his voice was strong and clear. 50 years ago, I was about to be hanged for a crime I didn't commit, he began, and the crowd quieted to listen. I thought my life was over, but then a brave woman I'd never met spoke up and saved me. That woman became my wife, the mother of my children, the center of my world for half a century. He turned to look at Nora, and the love in his eyes made everyone present feel like they were intruding on something sacred. "You told me once that you could weather any storm," he continued, "and you can, you have. But what you taught me is that storms are easier to weather when you're not alone. You taught me that holding on to someone you love through the hard times is what makes life worth living." His voice grew thick with emotion. "I've held on to you through floods and droughts, through financial ruin and prosperity, through illness and health, through the births of our children and the deaths of friends. I've held on through 50 years of life, and I'll hold on as long as breath remains in my body. You are my anchor, my home, my heart. I love you, Nora Sullivan, and I thank God every day for the moment you decided to speak up and save a condemned man's life." There wasn't a dry eye in the house when he finished. Nora stood and embraced him, and they held each other while their family and friends applauded and wiped away tears. Later that night, after the guests had gone home and the house was quiet, Nora and Marcus lay in bed together, exhausted but happy. "That was quite a speech," Nora said. "I meant every word," Marcus replied. "I know you did," Nora said, "and you're right. The storms are easier when we're together. I don't think I could have survived half of what we went through if I'd been alone." "You would have," Marcus said confidently. "You're the strongest person I know. But I'm glad you didn't have to. I'm glad we had each other." "Me too," Nora whispered. They fell asleep wrapped in each other's arms, just as they had for 50 years. And though neither of them knew how many more years they would have, they knew that whatever time remained would be spent together, weathering whatever storms might come, holding on to each other until the very end. The seasons turned once more, and life continued its rhythm on the Sullivan Ranch. Nora and Marcus, now well into their 70s, moved a bit slower, but their minds remained sharp and their love remained constant. They spent their days surrounded by family, watching the youngest generations grow while imparting wisdom gained from more than 50 years of partnership. On a crisp autumn evening in 1928, as the sun painted the Texas sky in shades of gold and amber, Nora and Marcus sat on their porch one last time. Marcus had been feeling poorly for several days, though he tried to hide it from everyone. But Nora knew. After 52 years together, she could read every nuance of his expression, every subtle sign. "Are you in pain?" she asked quietly, her hand in his. "A little," Marcus admitted, "but it's bearable. Everything's bearable when you're here." "Should I call for the doctor?" Nora asked, though part of her already knew the answer. "No," Marcus said gently. "Not tonight. Tonight I just want to sit here with you and watch the sunset like we've done 1,000 times before." So they sat, hands clasped, watching as the sun sank below the horizon. And as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, Marcus turned to look at his wife one final time. "Nora," he said softly, "thank you for everything. For saving my life that day, for loving me, for building this beautiful life with me, for weathering every storm by my side. Thank you." "Thank you," Nora whispered, tears streaming down her face because she understood what was happening. "Thank you for holding on. Thank you for never letting go." "I'll never let go," Marcus promised. "Not really. I'll be waiting for you wherever I'm going. And when your time comes, I'll be there to hold your hand again." "I love you," Nora said through her tears. "I love you too," Marcus replied. "Always and forever, through every storm." He closed his eyes then, a peaceful smile on his face. And as the stars wheeled overhead, Marcus Sullivan took his final breath with his beloved wife's hand in his. The grief that followed was profound. Nora had weathered many storms in her life, but losing Marcus was the hardest one yet. For the first time in 52 years, she was truly alone, and the silence was deafening. But she wasn't alone, not really. Her children and grandchildren rallied around her, providing comfort and support. They reminded her that Marcus lived on in all of them, in the family they had built together, in the legacy of love they had created. And Nora found that she could still weather this storm, though it was the hardest one yet. She drew strength from her memories, from the knowledge that she had been blessed with more than 5 decades of true love, from the family that surrounded her with care. She lived for 3 more years, spending her time with her family, telling stories about Marcus to the youngest generations who had never known him, keeping his memory alive. And though she missed him every single day, she found peace in knowing that their love story was complete. It had a beginning, a middle, and eventually an ending. But what an extraordinary story it had been. On a warm spring evening in May of 1931, Nora passed away peacefully in her sleep, surrounded by her children. She was 78 years old and had lived a full, rich life. At her funeral, her children spoke of her strength, her courage, her unwavering love for their father and for all of them. They spoke of how she had weathered every storm life threw at her, how she had built something beautiful and lasting out of hardship and determination. She was the woman who could weather any storm, Matt said in his eulogy, his voice strong despite his grief. And our father was the cowboy who held on to her through everyone. Together, they showed us what love looks like, what partnership looks like, what it means to face life's challenges together rather than alone. They gave us an example we'll carry forward for generations. Nora Camden Sullivan was laid to rest beside Marcus on a hill overlooking the ranch they had built together. Their grave was marked with a simple stone that read, "She was the woman who could weather any storm. He was the cowboy who held on to her through everyone. Together they built a love that weathered them all." And on that Texas hillside, as the wind whispered through the grass and the sun set in brilliant colors, their love story finally came to its close. But the legacy they had built, the family they had created, the example they had set, that would live on. Through their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren and beyond, the love of Nora and Marcus Sullivan would continue to weather every storm that came. Their story was complete, a tale of two people who found each other in the most unlikely circumstances, who chose each other every day for more than 50 years, who weathered floods and droughts and hardships and joys together, a story of true partnership, of unwavering devotion, of love that grew deeper with every storm weathered side by side. And though they were gone, their love remained, as enduring as the Texas prairie, as constant as the stars overhead, as eternal as the promise they had made to each other all those years ago through every storm, holding on together until the very end and beyond.